Topic of conversation today, Argentina.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. You mentioned the topic. I don't know anything about this.
Argentina's always been very interesting to me. There's like an old dry economics joke. It's something like you've got developed nations, you've got emerging markets, and then you've got Argentina and Japan. There are these kind of just two outliers that just don't really fit into traditional macroeconomic theory like for decades now. And that's not for lack of trying. People have been trying to fit them into a box in a way that applies to other countries as well. Again, for decades, people just haven't been able to. So this is really interesting just from a pure economics perspective. The US Treasury actually quietly bought Argentine pesos within the past couple of weeks. Why did they do that? How much do they buy?
It's the root of all evil, of strife and upheaval, but I'm certain.
So far, the U.S. really just Bessent has been on the airwaves. Basically, is putting together a $40 billion rescue package for Argentina. So the first part of that, it's split into two parts. The first of which is a swap line with the U.S. government. And then the second is a private sector facilitated swap line with Argentina as well for dollars for Argentine pesos, both $20 billion in size. So what exactly is a swap line?
I mean, when I think of swaps, I think of like interest rate swap. That's how like I've kind of always heard and used them, in which someone you get into a deal with kind of a broker or another counterparty, in which one person, pays a fixed rate and then another person pays a floating rate.
Yeah, and pretty much this is fundamentally the same thing. So instead of an interest rate swap, this is a FX swap. Instead of swapping fixed for floating rate payments based on two interest rates, you're swapping two currencies based on the exchange rate of those currencies. So basically, if I'm the US, I'm saying, Argentina, I'm offering you a $20 billion swap line, so you can give me Argentine pesos at some agreed upon exchange rate, and I'll give you as many dollars as you want, up to 20 billion. So that's the part right now that's really, there's no more details around that. Like, what is that exchange rate going to be? What is the term of those swap lines going to be? Is it going to be extendable? All this stuff, really, there's been nothing yet. And
oh, that's really interesting. Okay, really nothing. So like, sometimes I was just doing some briefly reading some stuff beforehand. Some people mention like an interest rate. Like, this is not a loan.
it's effectively a loan denominated in FX. So it's like they're taking a dollar loan and posting Argentine pesos as collateral.
Okay, right. So they're going to expect, they do expect the dollars to come back. They got to pay them back.
Exactly. So that's one of the criticisms that Bessent has had so far. Why are we bailing out other countries? Why are we giving Argentina $20 billion? And Bessent has said, we're not giving them money. We're giving them a swap line. We're going to loan them some dollars and we'll hold their currency in exchange. And then at some future agreed upon date, they'll give us those dollars back.
Plus interest.
Mm-hmm. If they can.
Is that what it says? Does it say that there's going to be plus interest, or there's no mention of it in like the
There's no official details yet.
There's no official details yet. Okay. That's wild. Okay.
These are pretty common things that governments do, by the way. So, for our background here, the Fed does this all the time. The Fed has throughout various crisis periods, they have opened up standing swap lines with other foreign central banks, but it's effectively just giving money to the country, because then that foreign central bank takes those dollars and turns around and lends it to all of their banks, et cetera, et cetera.
You'd be careful when you say giving them money. Lending them.
Lending, yes.
Lending them.
Yes.
This is like, one of the most annoying things I see, the whole bailout talk. That always drove me nuts because it was just inaccurate. And I think we're falling into that somewhat falling into that trap, the language trap.
Mm-hmm. And then people just say, why are we giving them money? Well, we're giving them money with the expectation of getting it back at some future date.
Yeah, maybe even earn a profit, earn interest on it. Yep. Okay.
But what are swap lines? How do they function? And why are these liquidity arrangements with foreign central banks important to households and businesses in the United States? In today's global economy, bank funding markets extend across borders, and developments in any one area can have a far-reaching impact. When these funding markets break down, the provision of credit to businesses and households in the United States and other countries can be disrupted. As our nation's central bank, it's the Federal Reserve's responsibility to do what it can to support the functioning of U.S. markets, both at home and abroad, to shield the U.S. economy from financial strain. One way the Fed does this is by entering into U.S. dollar liquidity arrangements, or swap lines, with foreign central banks. Acting on behalf of the Federal Reserve System, the New York Fed and a foreign central bank agree to exchange or swap currency of equal value for a set period of time. The Fed supplies dollars and receives an equivalent value of foreign currency. At the time of the agreement, a market-based exchange rate is applied to exchange foreign currency for U.S. dollars. That same exchange rate is then applied when the transaction matures. In addition to a fee paid by the foreign central bank, the Fed receives back the same amount of dollars it initially provided, meaning it bears no foreign exchange risk. And it is the foreign central bank, not the Fed, that bears the risk of lending to financial institutions located within its jurisdiction. When U.S. dollars are made available to foreign central banks during times of market stress, it provides certainty and stable pricing to financial institutions in those jurisdictions. The financial institutions are then able to extend credit to households and businesses that rely on U.S. dollar funding markets for trading and investing, and U.S. dollar funding markets around the world continue to function normally. As a result, funding markets in the United States remain stable.
At least since 2008, this has been something that has been fairly common with central banks, particularly the Fed, and as a result, basically the world's major central banks. This is also something that the Treasury can do. And again, so there haven't been the core details out yet, but it's generally expected that any sort of capital for something like this would come out of the Exchange Stabilization Fund. So this is a line item that they have on their daily Treasury statements, and they publish much more detailed monthly reports on exactly what's going on in that ESF. These things are obviously on a lag here. I think just August is available at this point, but as soon as the October report comes out, we should have some concrete evidence of just how many Argentine pesos the U.S. did end up buying.
Wait, and how do we know that? Because they have to report it back to, what are we looking at? This is Treasury?
The ESF can be used to purchase or sell foreign currencies, hold for an exchange and special drawing rights assets, and to provide financing to foreign governments. All operations of the ESF require explicit authorization of the Treasury Secretary. So here's what the most recent monthly report looks like.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Cool.
So as soon as this comes out for October, you can be sure that we're going to be taking a close look at it.
Yeah, right.
For now, I won't walk through the whole thing, but far more granularity, to the penny on exactly what is coming in and out of this ESF. So more to come there. So where are we today? Why Argentina? Why now? What's the deal? So we know without any ambiguity that the U.S. and Trump's cabinet sees Argentina as a very key ally. They've come out for Argentina multiple times, strongly defending any ties that they have. So this first tweet from Bessent about a month ago now, before this chatter started coming up, but it sort of lays the groundwork saying that everything's on the table, kind of anything could happen from this point. And then we'll see how that has evolved over the past couple of weeks now. And then also, interesting side note, I usually like to put Trump's tweets up here. They're usually a bit spicier, but it's kind of funny. This seems to be an area that he's just kind of staying away from. This is truly where Bessent's hedge fund days are shining here. The way he talks about the economy, their sovereign debt, their FX. It seems just a little bit out of Trump's wheelhouse.
Yeah, right. No, I was going to say, we got to, just for some background, remember, Scott Bessent or whatever was part of the team that broke the pound, right?
Exactly. And so that's one of the really interesting things.
No, yeah, no. So he's very familiar back from his, 30 years ago or whatever it was when, he was doing trades in the FX market.
So he's now effectively doing the very thing that as an investor, he broke, more or less.
Yeah, right. I mean, you could totally see that, people like Scott Bessent, younger version of themselves, just kind of rubbing their hands together, seeing if they can't break the peso. I mean, you got 20 billion of reserves. Can they go through it?
Now, this one's more difficult because it is more difficult to transact in Argentine financial assets, whereas that one, the pound, the Bank of England, that was obviously a global reserve currency, widely accessible. So it will be really interesting. Yeah, you're right, to see if there are any high profile hedge fund plays against this. That would kind of be the worst case scenario for Bessent here. Like, they're lending these dollars out in order to stabilize the peso, but financial markets, hedge funds, whoever, they see that this isn't going to work for whatever reason. It's not enough. They're not supplying enough confidence through enough dollars. They probably, or maybe they think they don't have the political capital to bring it as far as it needs to go to truly save the peso. So if you take out a massive short position on it, you could quickly burn through the US $20 billion stabilization fund. And at worst, you could break the currency itself, which is a very real possibility. Whereas with the sterling back in the 90s with Bessent, no one really thought the sterling was going to go to zero. But with the Argentine peso, there is some chance that the currency itself comes out of this, this as in current political landscape for years to come, where it could, go down to zero more or less. And then at that point, the US really would have been giving Argentine dollars, or giving Argentina $20 billion.
Is that the case? I mean, don't they? I mean, in the thing that you showed earlier, though, it said that the entire FX risk is not at in that case, the Fed. So, and they're still going to be expecting to get the dollars back.
You're expecting those dollars back, but if you don't have the dollars to give back and the currency you're left holding, you should be able to sell those, at least for something. But if the currency, just goes so low and Argentina doesn't have the money, Argentina is going to default on that transaction, of which there have been multiple Argentina defaults on their sovereign debt within the past couple decades. They're also notorious for having that happen as well. So with that Fed perspective, this is really about, they have swap lines with the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, European Central Bank. No one's under any impression that the Japanese yen is going to completely implode and go to zero. Whereas in Argentina today, there's a much lower bar to cross to get to a catastrophic outcome with Argentina than it is for that Fed facility. That's why they said the risk is on those central banks, because they still have to return those dollars. There's no assumption really that they're not going to have the dollars to return, whereas it could happen here.
Okay. So I guess from that video that we watched before, it was correct in saying that there isn't any FX risk, if I remember correctly. But it's incorrect in saying that there isn't any risk whatsoever. There's still credit risk, if for whatever that other. So that was a little dishonest, in a way. Would you go into a side thing as to how it would be broken, how you would break the buck, or how you would? Because I'm kind of wondering about that, but just sitting here thinking about it, I understand that the pressure now on the peso is the fact that there's just a huge demand for dollars and very little for pesos. And so that's just going to push the price of the dollar up. It's going to push, the peso down. And to fill the demand, I don't know if it's a central bank or some government entity is going to be buying that. So they're going to be exchanging the dollars that they have with, all the pesos that's trying to get out to prop it up. But they can only do that for so long. But if you were like an outside investor and you wanted to try to break it, how would you do it? You would have to buy a whole bunch of pesos. But as soon as you did that, how would you?
Well, you'd have to sell pesos.
Exactly. But you don't have any. So you're like an outside investor and you want to get in on this, but you don't have any pesos. You just lever up. So you go there and just say, lend me a gazillion pesos. And then.
Yeah, you would just short the currency. And that's exactly what you just said. You borrow someone else's currency and you sell it and you say, I'm going to give this back to you at a later date. So those are the core risks involved here. So the question is, presumably no one is more aware of those risks than someone like Bessent. So as a result, why is he doing this? What motivation does the US have to do this? The risk seems so high. Why would they do it? Bessent said it himself in that tweet that we read. They're a systemically important economy in Latin America. So that kind of makes sense. That, and maybe because of this, they're systemically important, they think, but Javier Milei is very politically aligned with Trump and the overall MAGA movement. I think that they even say MAGA themselves, make Argentina great again. So they're just really close political buddies. And that's been a recent criticism saying, why is the U.S. not, maybe they don't need the same kind of support, but why is the U.S. not talking about its support in as full-throated of a way for Brazil, for example, the largest economy in Latin America? Not super obvious why, but one of the things that is obvious is that their political leadership at the moment, Lula, he's basically the complete opposite of Trump. So they just don't really get along. Trump doesn't like him. Before Trump's UN speech, the Brazilian president spoke right before him, and he gave a little public jab to Trump. There's just a lot of bad blood there.
Love to see a clip of that. What did he say?
It was done in proper veiled language, something along the lines of, "We can't be so reckless with the global political order facilitated by the UN," or something like that.
Multilateralism is at a new crossroads. The organization's authority is in check. We are witnessing the consolidation of an international order marked by repeated concessions to power play, attacks on sovereignty, arbitrary sanctions, and unilateral interventions are becoming the rule. There is a clear parallel between the multilateralism crisis and the weakening of democracy. Authoritarianism is strengthened when we fail to act in the face of arbitrary acts, when the international society falters in defending peace, sovereignty, and the rule of law. The consequences are tragic.
That speech was literally just before then Trump went on. So it was all done very purposefully. So I don't know. What do you think, Luke? Outside of just pure politics, what do you think the U.S. might have to gain here?
Well, like I said, if they think it's going to work, then maybe you'll get some profit. But obviously, that's not what's driving it. You get a lot of favors. Another market. I think, as you said before, you want to see your buddies succeed. So there's probably some political motivations there, I guess. One of the things, my initial response to this was, last I checked in, and again, this is just kind of me checking kind of broader headlines, is that Milei was like crushing it over there in Argentina. And it was just a big high five moment between Trump and Milei, and like, oh, look at our policies, just free market, all that kind of stuff. It's so great. Look how it works. In a way, this would be, if this failed, then it would be a big load of pie in the face, just for the overall philosophy of, kind of free market, all that kind of stuff. So you want to see this succeed. They want to see him succeed. They want to see these policies succeed.
Like you said, they have been succeeding so far. He was elected in 2023. And so for a good 2 years here, he was seeing really positive results. They got inflation down from like 100% or something like that down to the single digits, I believe. The government's been turning monthly surpluses for, I forget, month after month for a while now. Things seem to be looking pretty good, but recently things are looking a bit shakier. I've read some criticism that Milei was good to come in with a chainsaw and shake everything up, but he kind of, right now, he's lacking the, I guess, political wherewithal to create a governmental environment to kind of cement this lasting change. It still seems a little too chaotic, and just as quick as some of these political wins have been, they might be just as quick to be lost at this point.
Can I ask any like, what's the initial reason for why there was so much dollar flight Yeah, because I know they're trying to like manage it, so they're not pegging it. I guess it's like a crawling peg, so they're just kind of let it weaken against the dollar, but only like a 2% or something annually. And like they haven't been able to hold on to that, but I think potentially after lifting some capital controls and legalizing dollar transactions, maybe he did that too early or something in part of the reforms, because now all the dollars are leaving.
Yeah, and sometimes like these things might not even have a clear reason. Whenever you have a financial crisis, and this is effectively what's happening in Argentina or taking shape at this point, these things are kind of self-fulfilling as well. Like if one day you're okay with the government, and you as in the Argentine people, let's say, you hear something that gives you a negative outlook, you hear your neighbor talking about it, you sell pesos for more dollars instead, you hear someone else do it, and then all of a sudden this thing snowballs, and you've got massive amounts of people all selling the peso to take in dollars instead, because they're losing confidence very quickly.
What we're doing is maintaining a U.S. strategic interest in the Western Hemisphere. America first doesn't mean America alone. And look, when you have a failed state in South America like Venezuela, now we are having to track down and blow up these cartel ships. So you don't want to create another failed state. It's my belief that the Obama administration missed a generational opportunity during his 8 years. Many of the governments down there moved from far left to center right. We did not support them. And then they took a hard lurch to the left. And now Argentina is a beacon down there. And there's a chance now for many other countries to come along. Bolivia, Ecuador, I think Colombia after the elections. So what you don't want are these failed economic models. And Argentina has 100 years of decline, and President Milei is working against history, and he's done a fantastic job. And I am sure that when we see the elections this month, that he's going to do well, his party will do well. The Argentinian people, especially the young people, what's encouraging in Argentina, it's the young people who've made the decision not to impoverish their nation. And as far as what the U.S. is doing, just to be clear, we are giving them a swap line. We are not putting money into Argentina.
We are not putting money into Argentina. A little bit ominous there. The context is then a few days later, he tweeted saying, "We did just buy Argentine pesos."
Just straight up bottom. I can't help but wonder that, like, if I think in some of the early interviews with Bessent, he sat across people and he said, it's very strange for me to sit on this side of the government private relationship. For the longest time, he's been on the other side in the private trying to look in. And now he's like firmly sitting on the government side. And there's got to be a piece of him wondering that, like, if this does come to a head and he is going to be fighting the world's kind of hedge funds, right? To like who's going to do a better job of propping or either taking down the peso or propping it up? It's like the U.S. government versus everything else if he wants to engage in this sort of market econ hedge fund war. I mean, they got to smell blood, right? I mean, you got to imagine that there are going to be plenty of looking to short it and put downward pressure on it. And it's just like, look, I got the backing of the US Treasury here. I can do this all day or whatever. And then just put a whole bunch of hedge funds out of market. You can't help but wonder if he isn't thinking that.
But definitely. And that's what's so interesting about this, or like we were saying, Bessent is the guy that should know this better than anyone else.
Pretty much,
the risks
yeah.
are here.
It's just like we can nearly print this stuff. But again, it's with Treasury. It's not with the Fed, right? I mean, is there any way to open that line?
And that does make it a lot stickier. So I think and that's the other weird thing. Why, like, we just don't have any concrete details on this yet. It's really unclear. I think it's going to flow through this exchange stabilization fund, like I mentioned, which is not unlimited, not in the same way that the Fed can come out during crises like in 2008
and like literally just print money. The Treasury can't print money. Yeah. I mean, that would be, hedge funds would probably know better than to go against something that could print money.
One of the things on the trading floor, don't fight the Fed.
Yeah, you got that little wry smile. We're proud of our time, I think, at the Fed.
Oh, definitely. Like the last part of that conversation, he said, we're not giving them money, we're giving them a swap line. And then just a few days later, then he comes out and tweets again, U.S. stands with Argentina. Yesterday, Treasury bought pesos in blue chip swap and spot markets. So in spot markets, they just bought the pesos outright.
Okay. Because I'm kind of looking, I sort of got on my screen here the exchange rate between the US dollar and the peso. And there was a big dip on the 13th. But I don't know if that like totally aligns, which would align if you came in and someone bought a whole bunch of them. Yeah, there are two like distinct dips here. One in the end of September, and then it spiked back up. And there was another one down on the 13th, and then it's since clawed back up. I don't know. You got to imagine. I mean, how much money? How many billions would it take just to push this back down? Like, I wonder how much in the exchange rate, how much could you buy for like $1 billion? I don't mean, so let me explain that. What I mean is how much could you move the market with $1 billion? That's my question.
Yeah, that's the big unknown. So they've so far bought some unknown amount, about 2 months from now on that ESF statement. I'm assuming we'll get a precise number on that, or, at least something more specific. $20 billion swap line. And Bessent's also, I briefly said earlier, trying to coordinate with Wall Street banks an additional $20 billion swap line. So he thinks $40 billion should be able to get it done. But the market knows this now, and that chart you were looking at, it's still going way up. The peso's getting weaker still.
Yeah, you can clearly see like they were fighting 2%. You can see that it's just kind of gradually ticking up at the 2%. It looks rough just eyeballing it, and then like April, it just totally spiked up on the 15th. And since then, it's been somewhat sporadic. It looks like there's a fight here, but it's definitely going up more than that 2% line.
Yeah, I forget what was going on there, but I do know that was Bessent's meeting with Millet. So that April 14th. So that was like either right before or right after. I would assume this meeting stabilized things again.
Kind of. I mean, it totally spiked, and then it hit a spike. I guess it peaked in that area on the 15th. And then it dropped on the 16th and 17th down to the 22nd. And then it kind of came back up.
Yeah, so there was some reaction, I guess, a couple days after this meeting, perhaps. But again, it could be something totally different. But certainly getting public support from the U.S. is going to help your currency, for a country like Argentina.
Yeah, well, certainly going to cool if they're really worried. If the core issue is going to be investors in the country or just people in the country just really worried about the peso, right? I mean, the fact that you have a backing definitely is going to cool things down. I mean, it reminds you of like a bank run where
exactly.
Where like at a bank, people are really worried that the bank's going to go under, so everyone moves their deposits. But then the Federal Reserve, for instance, comes around and says, we're going to give them a huge loan. All right, just calm down. Okay, we have your money. Just relax. That's kind of what this feels like.
That's precisely what they're trying to do here. Look at all this backing the U.S. has, or Argentina has from the U.S., specifically $40 billion worth of backing, plus potentially more that was already bought. Is that going to be enough? And like, again, just looking at that FX chart, it doesn't seem like the market's buying it. So it seems like there's, as of today, late October here, before the Argentinian election, before these formal swap lines have been rolled out, things could really go south from here still. It's really unclear. So with that, that's pretty much where we're at today. We don't have much detail from the U.S. still, but Bessent's out there. He's out there every other day on X issuing these posts, basically market-moving information without really much detail thereafter, no official detail otherwise. He's kind of taken a page out of Trump's book in that regard here. So is it going to work out for him, or is he going to suffer the same fate that the Bank of England did at his hand about 30-some years ago now?
Oh, cool. Yeah, let's follow this. I'm curious. This is not something I'm super familiar with. Sort of these, FX, international exchange and stuff, obviously. All right, man. Yeah, keep us up to date on this. I really don't know much about this, so I'd be really curious to learn more. I'd be, what are you looking out for next? This is just that report that sort of shows for October.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, it's give us some official detail here, and the market's going to have some response to that. If it comes in under expectations, I'm not sure what that even actually is, but we'll see from the market reaction if there's something sharp thereafter. Does the peso weaken or strengthen sharply thereafter? And then just other economic fundamentals. You can also look at where their sovereign debt is trading at. These things typically go hand in hand in EM countries. When the currency sells off, the bonds will as well. So, there could be some level of, do they both increase in value? Do they diverge even maybe? So that, and then finally that ESF report that I'm already eagerly awaiting for the October version.
Yeah, me too. All right, looking for an update on this. Cool. All right, thanks a lot, Joe.
Sounds good. More to come here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's all we've got for now. You can be sure that we'll update you on the situation as it unfolds. But until then, this has been the Root of All Evil podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joe.
I'm Luke.
We'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.